I'm Caitlin, and I run the financial literacy program here at Union Bank and Trust, which means this is what I do for a living. I teach basic financial anything. So anything that you want to know about finances, meaning budgeting, how a bank works, scams that might be happening, that's what I do. I teach. And so today, or for the next several series, we're going to just kind of build on what we're talking about today. And today we're going to be talking about budgeting and how to budget. Um, what I'm going to do is I'm going to send some worksheets to Maura to send on to you to have you build your own budget. Now, this could be fake. It doesn't matter to me. You can say that you earn $1 million. I don't care. But we're going to go through what a budget looks like. And then I want you to make your own between now and the next session. And then, but we're going to talk about how to do that, what to consider. One of the things I would strongly encourage you to do is if you are able to sit down with a parent or guardian and maybe do a budget with them, kind of get an idea of things that we're going to talk about today of how much things really cost, electricity or water or things, food budget, things like that. Now, sometimes parents, guardians don't want to tell you all of their finances, but maybe have a discussion a little bit about some of the items that are on the budget form, just to get an idea, especially if you plan on moving out or going to college and moving out, kind of get an idea of what you're doing. So I'll send that along, but I'll explain it first, so don't worry about that. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off with budgeting, and then we're going to end with needs versus wants. And needs versus wants is really what needs to be in a budget versus what you want in a budget. And how do you tell the difference? And how do you prioritize what that looks like? I love questions, so feel free to ask questions. I do have my chat box up. So if you want to ask me a direct question or ask the group a question, I'll keep my eye on that. And I know Maura's really good about asking those questions too as they come if I don't see them. So I will ask for questions here and there and pause and take a break to address them also. I'm trying to move my camera around here. Okay. So let's get started. So we're going to talk about our budget first. So what is a budget? Without reading all of this, a budget is a financial plan for a specific period of time. That's all I'm going to say about a budget, what it is. A budget is a plan for a period of time. Now, some people like to budget every week. Some people like to budget on a monthly basis. For the most part, a monthly basis is the best way to go, simply because most of our bills that you pay as an adult, you're paying on a monthly basis. But some people just really need to do it on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, and that's fine. Whatever works for you. There's no rules to budgeting. There's just kind of good ideas. And that would be one of them, to go with the monthly budget. And why is it important to budget? So nearly 2 out of 3 American families, we're just talking about America, live paycheck to paycheck. And what that means is by the time that the next paycheck rolls around, there's no money in your bank account. And then you spend all your money again and there's no money. And so you're constantly waiting to get paid. And so for a lot of folks, they get paid every 2 weeks or twice a month. And so people go through their entire paycheck within a two-week period or less. And so that's not always a good thing. Some people, that's just the way it's going to be, and that's okay. But having a strong budget helps you plan ahead for emergencies or when your bills are due, how you're going to pay them without running out of money. The next one, 40% of Americans can't cover a $400 emergency if that happened today. So what that means is if I left my house today and got in my car and my windshield was cracked and I needed to get it replaced, 40% of Americans could not afford to do that. Or if I needed new tires, so my tires, because I drive an SUV, would cost more than $400, 40% of Americans could not cover that. I know that y'all are young, but it is something to think about now, is budgets, because when you're driving or you have jobs or you move out, this is something that we're saying that almost half of Americans, and I've read statistics that it's a lot more like 60%, they could not cover an emergency. And that's scary. Especially if you don't have resources to help you. So I grew up in a family that once you moved out, my parents didn't help financially with anything. So if there was an emergency, I had to figure it out. And my grandparents were often gracious enough to help, but not everybody has those resources. So they either put it on a credit card or they have to borrow it from a friend, but some people don't even have that. So it's just something to think about, is saving for emergencies. And we call that proactive budgeting. And then the American Psychological Association, so this is the group that does a lot of research on mental health. They say that money remains the number one stressor for almost 3/4 of Americans. So if we think about all of our stress in life, 3/4 of Americans would say that money is the root of the problem, which is crazy. I've talked to a lot of doctors' offices in my time. I used to work in a different department, so I would go and do stuff like this in doctors' offices, and they would say that there's a lot of people that come in with like physical problems. Physical therapists would say the same thing. People have physical problems, but they realize that it's their stress and it's coming out of their body in a different way. So like chronic pain or chronic headaches, knee pain, joint pain, maybe their stomach is always upset, things like that. So that's what they're talking about, is money may be the root of the stress, but it could actually come out in a different way. And we don't really realize it until we realize it, and then we can take care of it. Moving on here, let's talk budgeting basics. So we've defined budgeting, and now we have talked about why it's a good idea to budget, especially for mental health reasons. Let's talk about budgeting basics. So steps to a successful budget. And I'm going to walk you through this, and I'm going to give you resources. So don't think you have to create this on your own. But the idea behind a budget is to compare your income, so what's coming in, so money coming in, to your expenses, what's going out. And that's really what a budget is. It's just knowing what your income is, knowing where it's going. And then we're going to reference those. We're going to cross-reference those. We always want to know where our money is coming from. So some people work a consistent job, 40-hour-a-week job, 60-hour-a-week job. They know how much they're going to make. They know exactly what's coming in their budget. But there's a lot of people out there that receive money through other means, whether it's child support or a second job, a third job. I can't think, SSI, so disability money, things like that. So we want to know where our money is coming from for a successful budget, so that we can account for it. We don't want to forget about it. And then it's always good to know where it's going. And I'm going to have a really great worksheet to help you figure out where your money is going. And no matter what age you are, this can be done. I promise you, a budget can be done no matter what age you are, or how little or large amount of money you actually have. And then another step to a successful budget is making adjustments. The average person takes 3 months to make a successful budget, because we forget about things all the time. Maybe like we just came off of the holidays. So the holidays, we do extra spending. We go extra places. A lot of people travel more. Not last year, but people do all these things that they wouldn't normally do for the rest of the year. And so we're constantly making adjustments to our budget, and that's okay. But it's good to plan ahead. And that's another lesson that we're going to talk about in later weeks, but planning ahead for things like traveling and gifts. So if you have a birthday coming up, or a family member's birthday and you want to buy gifts for them, planning ahead, where is that money going to come from? But it's okay to always make adjustments. Okay, so there's 3 sections for budgeting, and we're going to look at 2 worksheets on how to do it. We're going to talk about net income. So the word net and gross, you'll probably hear that a lot when it comes to earning money. Net income is what you're going to bring home. It's at the end of the day, after taxes and all that stuff is taken out of your paycheck. Net is what I'm bringing home. And the way that I remember this is I forget about gross. Gross means just how much money you make before taxes, before health insurance, before all this stuff. So net, if we only think of that word, let's think about fishing. We throw our net out and we pull it back in, and the fish in the net are what we're taking home with us. So think of that as cash. So we throw our net out and we're going to gather up what's left or what we can grab after taxes, and we're going to take it home with us. So that's how I remember the difference between gross and net, is just remember what net means: casting a net, pulling in the fish, or pulling in our cash, and that's what we take home with us. So we're going to have our net income, how much we make, how much we bring home. We're going to have a section for our expenses. So what are we spending our money on? And then we're going to compare those two and see if we're negative. So if we spend more than we make, or if we come out even, or if we make more than we spend. If your budget changes weekly or monthly, it's okay. Mine does. I have an app on my phone, which I'll talk about for my budget, and I just keep an eye on it because it changes all the time. I have a little side hustle, and that doesn't always bring in an even amount of money. And so I don't always know how much I'm going to be bringing home that much, but I kind of keep tabs of it on this budget. So it's okay if it changes, you just make adjustments. If you have inconsistent income, you might have to make adjustments more often. So inconsistent income means you have no idea how much you're going to bring home. A lot of people are on salary or work a certain amount of hours a week. That's consistent. They know how much they're going to bring home. Inconsistent would be like if you're a server and you make tips, you have no idea how much you're going to bring home. You know how many hours you're getting and you get paid hourly, but the tips, you just don't know. Or if you work a job where, especially being a student, if you work 15 hours one week and 30 hours the next, you really can't account for how much you're going to make because you really don't know how many hours you're going to get. So especially your age group is more of the inconsistent income and what that looks like. So your budget and how you spend your money may differ every single week according to how much you're making. But we're going to talk about that a little bit more. So let's talk about how to budget. Now, this is a lengthy list of things that for the most part, most of you don't have to think about. Maybe you have to think of several things on here, but not all of them. This would be like a budget for someone that rents or owns a home, is paying utilities. So your parents or guardians may be more apt to use everything on this list versus you, who maybe just have a couple of them. But for the most part, when we're looking at a budget, we want to consider all these things. So if we donate money, so giving or saving, we want to be saving. Our housing, that means our rent or our mortgage, or how much we're paying someone to live in the home. Utilities, that could be gas, electric, trash, water. Food, that's groceries and eating out. Those are two different things, and we're going to get to that. Transportation, this could be if you have a car payment, if you take the bus, if you use an Uber everywhere you go, just planning ahead for how you're getting around. This could be, I worked with an adult, he was probably closer to 30, and his transportation was his bike. And he had taken out a small loan from a friend in order to buy a bike. So he was accounting for transportation in his budget to pay back his friend. And that's okay. As long as he was considering it, that was his mode of transportation. Clothing, we want to set aside clothing. We always need clothing, especially here in the Midwest. Every season, bring something. You need a different jacket for every season. That's how I look at it. So we may have to buy an expensive heavy coat or just like a summer rain jacket, but we always need something. Medical or healthcare, sometimes, or a lot of times that comes out of your check if you have a full-time job, but some people that's not how it works. If you have any debt, entertainment, that's things like going to the movies, concerts, going out with your friends, whatever entertainment looks like for you, that's fun. As you can see, it's a smaller range, but we want to be realistic and say, hey, we're going to have a social life and we need some money for that. So we want to be realistic. And then taxes, if it's not being taken out of your check, we definitely want to consider taxes in our budget. So like I said, when you're making your budget for this course, you're not going to use all of these, and that's okay. But maybe if you work with your parents or guardians and you want to do an actual budget with them, it could be very enlightening, even for them as an adult. This would be something to consider. And the percentages next to those are just what most financial gurus, like advisors, would suggest staying in that range. So especially housing, you never want to be paying more than 30% of how much you make. If you're paying more than that, you're really what we call house poor. Means you have a house or you have a place to live, but you just don't have any money to do anything else. So I know when you're buying a home, your loan agency, so like UBT, if you're going through them to buy a home, they're going to say you can't afford any more than 30%. So they're not going to even let you buy a home that costs more than 30% of your income. So a lot of people stick within these guidelines. Before we get
Can
into,
I interrupt for 1 second? I was just thinking about budget, and I do a monthly budget myself, but on my monthly budget, I have a entertainment sort of has been replaced because I don't go out and don't do entertainment anymore, but it's been replaced by my Starbucks addiction and how much I spend at Starbucks, because you can drive through and it's easy. So I have a question for everyone. I want an answer from most of you if you can, but think about that one thing that you buy every day. Do you have an item at school that you buy? Do you pay for your own lunch? Do you go to the corner gas station or the or Super C or the Casey's and buy a candy bar every day? What do you think? What is it that you guys spend that you wouldn't even think that would have to go on your budget, but it does? Ultimately, if I go over my Starbucks quota for the month, then I'm taking away from something else that I need to spend money on. So can I get a couple of answers from everyone?
You could put in the chat box
that you spend
for your what you're spending your money on. And maybe it's not every day, but it's like, you're gonna spend money on this. Like,
right.
Undeniable. Yeah. Mine would be like scooters because it's down the street.
Right.
So I'm right there with you that my entertainment budget tends to go to coffee.
Right. So let's
be realistic. And it's like, I got a budget for that because I'm going to spend the money. And like you said, if I don't budget for it, it's going to be taken out of something else.
Right. So let's get some answers.
Any answers?
Adelia, what is, a drink at school is good. What's manga? What's that? Oh, Spotify. Very good. That's been added. I just discovered Spotify and I had to add that to my budget. Maya, that's so good. Riley, you don't buy anything? Nothing? All right.
Books. I was that way. I've bought a lot of books lately.
Hannah, nothing. Okay.
Games.
I do. Games is good.
Riley likes to save more money.
Oh, well, bless your heart. I wish I were like that.
Me too.
I buy books too. I need to add books to my budget, but I have a miscellaneous slot on my budget where I
could be a little flexible.
It just goes to whatever. So all right. Thank you for participating, ladies. I appreciate your answers. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Okay, so moving on. Sorry to interrupt. No, I love that you did that because that's a really good point. That when I say put down something realistically, we have to look at what we're spending our money on, and it takes a little while to figure that out.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is how we're going to create a budget. We're going to write down all of our income. So anywhere that you're making money, and it could be an allowance, it could be a gift, it could be that you have a job or two jobs, or wherever you're getting money, we want to write that down. And we don't want to write it down as one number. We want to write it down as job number one, this is how much money I make. Allowance, this is how much money I make. If I receive any, let's say disability. I know there's a lot of teenagers out there that receive disability for various reasons, and it's part of their income. And so write that down. Anywhere you're getting money from on a regular basis, write that down. And then we're going to write down all of our expenses. And I'm going to make this really easy on you because I have a worksheet that I've written down a lot of expenses for you to choose from. But anytime that you spend money, we're going to account for that. Now, it doesn't mean that we're writing down everything that we're spending money on. It just means that we're going to put it all together each month and figure out where our money is going. So food, I have a line for groceries and I have a line for eating out. So you may be responsible for your eating out budget. So that's kind of my Starbucks budget right there. is eating out. And I like to go out for lunch because I'm home all day and I work from home. And so it's just really nice to get out sometimes and just drive around. So eating out is different than your grocery budget because your groceries totally different and cost way less than eating out. So we want to make sure those are different. So we're going to write down everything we're spending our money on, and I'm going to help you with that guide. And then we're going to go through and we are going to look at it. So traditionally when I work with people, I say for the first month, just keep track of where you're spending your money. That's it. That's all I want you to do for the first month. So for this, I think our next session is in 2 weeks. Is it next month? I'm not sure, but
2 weeks.
2 weeks. So you'll have 2 weeks to kind of think through everywhere you're spending your money, or work with your parents or guardians to put together a nice budget, or make it up. Whatever works for you. You could be creative on this. But step 3 would be consider everything. Did you really think through everything? For people who drive, one of the missing expenses is our registration. That comes here. We have to re-register our car, which can be hundreds of dollars. And a lot of people forget about that and they don't save for that. And so suddenly they're out hundreds and hundreds of dollars. This last year, in 2020 was the first year I had to register my car because I had bought it the year prior. And I had no idea how much it was going to cost. And it was dumb expensive. I mean, it was so expensive. I had been saving kind of as an estimate. So instead of having to come up with, hundreds of dollars, I only had to come up with, I think, about $100 to cover the difference. So I was trying to save ahead of time, be proactive about that. But that's the kind of thing that people don't consider is those yearly expenses or once a month expense or every 6 months. So we want to think through all of that. And
that's a good thing for you high school girls who are getting your driver's license this year or learner's permits this year, and maybe thinking about getting a car. It's car insurance, car registration, gas, all those things are things that you should it's just something to think about. You may maybe not have to pay for that, but it may have to. Who knows? So it's a good thing to think about.
Yep, absolutely. Once you know how much income you have, and once you figure out how much you're spending every month, we're going to compare them. And we're going to see if you're overspending, underspending, or breaking even. Breaking even is a great place to be. If you broke even every month, awesome. If you are earning more than you're spending, that's also a really great place to be. If we find that we are spending more than we're making, that's when we're going to have to go back to our budget and make adjustments and say, am I spending too much here, or could I spend less here? And so like one of the first things to go in that case for me would be my coffee, because it's not a necessity. We're going to go through needs versus wants. So should it be in there? Does it have to be in there? Okay. Yeah. Any extra dollars that you may have at the end of this comparison. So if you're coming out ahead, you make more than you spend, should go into savings or pay off debt. It needs to go somewhere. The theory behind that is if it's sitting in your bank account, you're going to spend it. So if you could put it somewhere in a savings account or use it to pay off debt, maybe you're saving for a car, something like that, put it somewhere. Don't just let it sit there. And then if you, like I said, if you don't earn enough to pay all of your expenses, then we need to relook at your budget. And that's what I do for a living, is I help people with that. So I can always help. All right. So this is the first worksheet that I'm going to send you, and it's our income worksheet. And for this, hold on, I'm hearing a noise and I don't know if it's me. Okay, sorry. Okay, so this is our income worksheet. And this is just some ideas that I've put down. A lot of this is for the adults that I work with. So there's a lot more options of where they're receiving income. But as you can see, I put job number 1, job number 2, there's child support, alimony, SSI, bonuses or incentives. So wherever your money is coming from, I want you to list that. So if you do have a job, put it under job number 1, how much you're making. Is it weekly or monthly? And then the others, this could be somewhere like allowance for you, or if you're gifted some money every month or every couple of months or anything like that. So for the most part, if you're receiving any money on a monthly or weekly basis, write it down and use its own line. And at the bottom, we're going to put the total amount of money that you're making. Now, if you want to do this activity and just make up a number, still fill this in. So let's think maybe your dream job, maybe do some research on that and say, you know, I want to be a nurse. How much do they make on a weekly basis or a monthly basis? And then put that on as job number one. And then just think, well, maybe I'm getting a bonus and I make a certain amount of money every month. Put that under bonus. So be creative if you want to. You don't have to, this does not have to be real, but I want you to act as if it is real when you're doing this activity. And it's not super hard. We just need some estimates. And then the next sheet, this is where I'm going to really help you out. And when you have this in your hand, it's really small right now, but this is the expenses. This is all the expenses that I could think of for the average person. So this is where money is going. So we have debt. Hopefully none of you have debt at this point, but there's credit cards, loans, medical bills, education bills, like school loans. Maybe you owe friends or family some money. There's some bank loans, taxes, anything like that. So debt would be that you owe someone. And then how much are you paying on that monthly? So for a car loan, I would put down how much I'm paying for my car, for instance. The next one is home. So rent or your mortgage, property taxes, HOA, repairs. So a lot of people will budget for repairs. So they put a certain amount aside. I just heard a statistic that somebody, you should be saving 2 to 4% of your monthly rent or mortgage for repairs. So that was a unique one. So if you're saving for that, or you pay rent, or again, parents, guardians, or make it up, let's put that down. Utilities, same idea. This might be a really good one to ask someone who actually pays these. How much does it cost? What's realistic about gas or electric or water? Trash, for us, trash is $20 a month. That's pretty standard in Lincoln. Water, though, is if you live in an apartment, it's going to change drastically every month. If you live in a house, depending on how many people are in the house, it could change. The summer months, we pay more for water because we have sprinklers and they go on every day. And so ask somebody, how much are you paying for water? What's realistic? It might be really surprising. Your phone bill also, that's usually one of the bigger expenses for most people is their phone bill. It's kind of shocking. Transportation, again, however you get around, whether it's a bike or a car or Uber, whatever that looks like for you, we want to put that down, but we want to consider registration for that, bus tickets, parking. So some people work downtown and they have to pay for parking, or they rent a parking space. We want to account for that. So again, a lot of this won't apply to you, but be creative. Just think, I would love to work downtown and rent a space. You might have to do some research, but it might be really enlightening to figure out how much it would cost. I once heard somebody tell me how much they thought their office was moving downtown, and it was going to cost them like $300 a month to park downtown every month. And they were not going to get that back from the company. So it wasn't worth it to do that. So they would rather take the bus into downtown, which is a lot of places you can get a monthly bus pass for $8. So it's a lot cheaper to just get the monthly bus pass. So that's key. You could get a bus pass, especially at your age, for $8 a month instead of paying $2 every way that you go. Clothing, I always put a clothing budget. So if it's you or your family, I would strongly suggest you look at how much it's going to cost for each person. So I have a 3-year-old or almost 3-year-old, and for him, we've had to budget a lot more for clothing because he grows so fast that it seems like every week I'm having to buy him new clothes. So when he hits like 5 or 6, he'll probably plateau for a little bit. We won't have to budget it as much, but it is a budget that I have to consider because I'm constantly buying him clothes. Food, groceries, and dining out. Those are 2 different things. Talk to a parent or guardian about the difference in those if you want to get a really good, realistic view of how much those go for. So insurance, if you have car insurance, renter's insurance. I put homeowners, I didn't put renters on there. I currently rent a house and we do have renter's insurance. So I pay like $15 a month for that versus my car insurance, which is a lot more. Medical or life insurance, not everybody has every one of these. A pet, if you have a pet, which I'm guessing most of you have a pet, this would be a good one to think about. How much are you spending on food or medicine? Maybe for a dog, you only take them once a year to get their shots, but it might cost you $60 to do that. So we want to plan ahead. What's 60 divided by 12? That's how much you should be saving every month for those shots so that you are ready to go when they need to have their checkup. So we want to put that in. Vaccines, grooming. We got our dog professionally groomed one time when we first got her. It cost us $60 and we never took her back again. We got our own clippers and we would do it in our living room every 3 months because it was so expensive and we could get a good pair of clippers for $30 and now we're saving $60 a month. But if you go to the groomers, give them a bath, things like that there, then account for how much that is costing. And then boarding. Some people board their dog every day, doggy daycare, things like that. Find out how much it is on a monthly basis. Children expenses, this likely won't apply to many of you, if any. And if it does, baby expenses, so that's diapers and wipes. So that's something I'm still considering is like training pants and wipes. And we had to consider formula, things like that. Childcare, and can't even see what's on there. Extracurriculars. So this might actually be a really good one for you if you're in sports, if you're in school for sports, because those fees don't happen every month, but they happen in the spring or in the summer or in the fall. So how much are your sports actually costing you when it comes up? Because that's one of those that could be hundreds of dollars when you start volleyball or cross country that you haven't been planning for. So let's figure out how much you could be saving.
Or your band uniforms, or your cheerleading uniforms, or your dance squad uniforms, or your uniforms that you have to wear for any of those events, symphony, all that. Those are expenses. You may not be paying for them, but let's still just put them down just so you know that it's there and it's an expense.
And you can make up a number or ask someone, how much does it actually cost to do this?
Yeah.
And then entertainment, those are things that you don't have to be doing, but they're there. They're on our list. So the gym or what did I put here? Gifts, hobbies. Hobbies could be sports. If you're part of a club, any extracurricular that you're doing. And then if you have any overdue bills, which I doubt.
Spotify.
Oh yeah, Spotify should go on entertainment. So if you need to cross something out to put your own idea on there, please do. I didn't cover everything, but please do. So whoever said Spotify, you've got one in your entertainment bracket right there. And then overdue bills, we just want to know how much you're overdue because we want to get you current. So most of you, if any of you, won't have that. So once we have all these things filled out, and again, you can cross off anywhere and just add whatever you need to, but we're going to total up that, how much you're spending every month, and you're going to have a number. And we're going to compare it to our income. So I said this a little bit earlier, if you break even, if you make 500 and you spend 500, great. At least you're making enough. If you make 500 but you spend 400, awesome. You've got an extra $100 every month. You're coming out ahead. It's if you make 500 but you spend 600 that we have a problem, that we have to go back to the budget and look around and see what we can do. And we're going to do that. So what I want you to do this time around is just make the budget. We're not trying to break even. We're not trying to come out positive. We just want to know where you're at, and then we can make, on our next session, make adjustments to what that looks like. So before I move on, does anybody have questions? You can also unmute yourself if you want to ask any questions. Okay, speak now or forever hold your peace. Okay, so there are some really great budgeting apps out there. So if you really want to devote yourself to this budgeting process, I would highly suggest getting an app because they make it really easy to use. Every Dollar is my favorite app. I use it. I look at it every day. It will basically line up everything that we just talked about on those worksheets, and it does it on your phone. There's a perk to these also because you could pay a small fee and they will connect to your checking account. So if you're paying a lot with your debit card or with checks, it'll just calculate that all by itself. I don't use that. I don't feel the need to. I just list out what I'm budgeting for. And then when I spend money, I go in there and I say, I just spent $100 on groceries, and I put that in my grocery category, and it will tell me, okay, you have $200 left to spend now. So every time I spend something, it subtracts it from how much I've budgeted. So it's really great because it'll tell you how much you make and then how much you have left to spend. So it makes it really easy to just say, hey, I don't have enough money to do that this month, maybe next month. Or you can look at it and say, yeah, I can do this. Absolutely. I'm making a little extra this month. I can go out with my friends this time. So I'm not going to go too much into the apps, but if you really wanted to devote yourself to a strong budget and being just really good at that, even if you're not making that much money, or even if you just have allowance, it's a good idea to get an app, because we look at our phones more than we do paper. But there is something to be said about doing these worksheets with paper, pen and paper. You can do it on the app, but I would suggest the first time around doing it with the paper tool that I'm giving you, because you can cross things out and you can, make notes of where you need to do it. But then once you figure out your budget, then we can add it to the app. Okay, some questions and answers that I get. I don't have a job. Should I still budget? Yep. If you have any source of income that's coming in, and it could just be allowance, yes, you should budget. Get in the habit now. I will tell you that none of this is what I was taught as a child. And I hear this all the time. People are saying, I didn't learn money management. I didn't know how to work a bank. I didn't know how to walk into a bank and get my needs met there. I don't know how to deal with money. So I can't stress enough how, even at your age, learning how to budget, learning realistic numbers of how much it actually costs to pay the electricity or rent, playing around with a budget is so helpful in the long run. It exposes you to these ideas. So when you're ready to move out on your own or take on more bills, whether it's a car payment or maybe you have to handle your own phone bill, it's realistic that, oh my gosh, I'm only making this much money, but I'm spending this much. So it's so good to budget no matter what age. I have inconsistent income, meaning I don't make a certain amount every week or month. Should I still budget? You should budget more than anyone else, because you're on a limited it's unpredictable how much you're going to make. So you need to know what needs to be in there and what doesn't. I'm not the main money maker in my family. So for a lot of you, you're not the main money maker. Maybe you never will be, maybe you will. But if you're not, maybe you do contribute to your family. So I know a lot of teenagers that they work and they do give a portion of their money to their family to help out. But you're not the main money maker. It's still a really good idea to budget, because if you're only getting a portion of your paycheck because you're giving the rest to your family, it's good to know where you can spend your money and where you can't. I'm only in high school. Should I budget? Yes. Learn now. You won't regret it. I promise you, you will not regret it. Learn money management now, and you will only get better at it. I don't have many bills and I make more than I spend. Should I budget? Yes, because it's really important that you know how much more money you make and how much more money you have to spend on anything you want rather than bills. So it's a good idea to budget with every situation. Okay, we're going to move past the budget. So like I said, and we'll go over it at the end, I'm going to send these worksheets to Maura for her to get to you. And if you'll just make your own budget, so income and expenses, and it could be totally fake. I'm fine with that. Be creative if you're going to. Maybe do a little research on if you're thinking, your future job, or maybe you want to own a home and in this price range and in this neighborhood. So maybe look up how much it's actually costing for electricity or gas or water, things like that. But be creative or talk to someone about their budget, and maybe you can kind of mirror what they're doing, like a parent or a guardian. But let's talk about needs versus wants, because this is really key when we're looking at our budgets. And what this is asking is what needs to be there versus what we want to be there, because those are very different things. And I'm going to use coffee as the main kind of example throughout this. So we have basic needs. These are survival needs. So we need food, we need shelter, transportation, and utilities. Shelter does not have to be that you own your own home or that you live in a house. It could be an apartment. It could be a shelter. You could be living with someone. We just need a safe place to sleep at night. And so some people pay a little bit more than others. Maybe you're just renting a room, but maybe you own a home, different things like that. So shelter can be anything. as long as we're safe. And so it's likely that you're paying something for your shelter, even if it is just a small fee. Transportation does not have to be a car. It could be a bus, it could be a bike, it could be a scooter, it could be Uber, any of those things. But we need to get around. And the purpose behind the transportation is we're going to school or we're going to work. So we need to get there. So how are we getting there? So we need to account for that. We need transportation. And then utilities, we've got to keep the lights on, got to keep us warm in the winter and cool in the summer. And we got to have water to drink. So these are the basic survival things that need to be in a budget. And when I say food, I don't mean eating out. I mean groceries, going to the store and buying groceries. Eating out at McDonald's is not a necessity, but we do have to have food. So we do have to account for food. If any of these are taken away from us, then our survival is in jeopardy. We're then in panic mode or we're stressing. So these are the main things that have to be a priority in your budget, meaning you're going to pay for these first before anything else. We're going to budget for these things first before anything else. A want is what's left over. Concerts, new pets. So a lot of us have pets. I'm talking new pets. New pets would be a want. Eating out, movies, sporting events, new clothes. A lot of these things we haven't been able to do a whole lot because of COVID. But in the old world prior to 2020, these are things that a lot of us would do, and we would consider those in our budget, but it doesn't mean we have to have them. You will survive if you don't eat out every day. You will survive if you don't go to a Husker game. Do we want to do them? Absolutely. And we would love to do a lot of these now, and we're ready to get back to them. But if we can't afford it, we'll still survive. So when you're looking at your budget, we should be asking ourselves, does it need to be in there? Does it qualify as a survival? Or does it qualify as just something that you want, that I could survive without? Needs always take priority over wants. So for me, I have a grocery budget and an eating out budget. I can afford to account for both of those. But if money gets tight, eating out goes real quick. That's something that doesn't have to be there. And so that money can move elsewhere. My coffee budget is like a subcategory of that. Really, if money's tight, then coffee budget goes, because I could buy coffee at the grocery store. I can get it. I have a Keurig at home. I've got all the fixins for a good cup of coffee here. But for me, going somewhere, getting out of my house and buying a cup of coffee is like a mental health thing, but I'll survive without it. So it's going to go first. Groceries got to be there. Eating out or getting coffee does not have to be there. So that's a need versus a want. I want to get coffee every day, but it doesn't mean I need to get coffee every day. So that's what you're asking yourself when we're readjusting our budget. So this first one, we're just going to make our budget, and then we're going to ask ourselves in the next session, does this have to be here? Or does it have to be here with this much money saved? So if I'm saving $200 a month so that I could go get coffee, I mean, really, I could take a step back and go, do I really need to be spending $200 a month on coffee? Probably the answer is no. So what if I cut back to $50 a month? That gives me the opportunity to go out, maybe not every day, but I can still get that coffee. But I'm saving a ton of money in the meantime that I can put elsewhere. So it doesn't mean we can't get our wants. We can still go to the movies. We can still go out with friends, but do we have to do it as much as we're doing and spending as much as we're doing? I have a good friend that just invited me. She found out that you can rent a movie theater with Marcus for $100, and you can take 20 friends with you, and you get a private screening for $100. So she said it was going to be cheaper for her to do that than 5 of her friends to go buy tickets and go to the movies. So she invited a couple of us to go. And then I said, hey, are we going to go out for dinner afterwards? And she said, yeah, but I'm thinking let's just come over to my house because it's going to be cheaper for everyone to do that. So there was a way right there that she was considering how we could all hang out together. We could all have dinner, but it's not going to be as expensive because we're just going to go to her house. So we can still hang out with people. We can still have a social life, but maybe we have to cut some corners in order to do it and consider our finances in the meantime. So that was really nice for me because I'm thinking, I don't have to pay for this movie, and she's probably going to supply dinner. So I don't have to pay for anything that night. and I get to go hang out with all my friends. Granted, COVID, we're having precautions for COVID, so don't think that I'm careless or anything. But it's people I'm around a lot more because of work. So there is a way to still get what we want, but maybe we don't put all of our money into our budget in order to get our wants. So while budgeting, it's important to list your needs first and your wants second. So if you do have a lot of these options of, I don't know if it's necessary, list them out. Find out what it is. For a lot of you who are in sports or band or choir or cheerleading, anything like that, it may be a necessity. It's just part of what you do for school. And so we may have to add that to the needs list because we're going to make it a priority that we get that. But maybe going out for coffee, that's not a priority to you. But maybe we have to cut back on what we're actually doing in order to fit the budget. So I do have this, and I'm going to send it with these worksheets. It's the needs versus wants. It's all the ideas. So as you can see on the wants list, Hulu and Netflix are a want. They are not a necessity. Cable is not a necessity. We don't have to have TV to survive. We want it. We don't need it. Maybe like for us, we knocked out cable, but we got Hulu and Netflix in replace of it because it's a lot cheaper. So we still get the shows that we want to watch, but it's at a much more reasonable price. So a lot of you, like if you are paying for Spotify, if that comes an issue with money, maybe you just do Pandora. Yeah, there's a couple commercials every 20 minutes, but you don't have to pay for it. So that's a way that we still get what we want, but we kind of have to make a accommodation for it. As you can see, new phone is on a wants list. Phone is a necessity, I get that, but a new phone is not. We will survive with what we have. So this is a reference list for you as you're making your budget and you're looking at that just to consider what needs to be there and what do I want it to be there. And doesn't mean you can't get your wants. We just have to be a little more strategic about it. When you're thinking about getting your wants on your budget, so the things that you really want there. So for me, it's a $200 budget for coffee. I would love to have that. I could go every day. But I want to ask, we have to ask ourselves, do I have the money to do this? Do I have an extra $200 laying around? No. So it's not an option for me to go to coffee every day. Can I buy it cheaper somewhere else? Yeah, I could go get the little pods for my Keurig, and that's how I get it cheaper somewhere else. I love Dunkin' Donuts coffee. So I buy the Keurig pods. So I kind of upgrade my Keurig coffee fund, but it's still cheaper than going to Dunkin' every day. If I wait, will it become less expensive? So for coffee, it's not going to. So it's still a want. And I can't really get it less expensive. The only way I could do that is if somebody gives me a gift card, and then it's less expensive for me. And then most importantly, can I live without it? Yeah, I can absolutely live without going to get coffee every day. Maybe I don't feel like I can live without coffee, so I got to get it at home. So again, it's still a way that I can get my wants met, but it's maybe not exactly how I want it met. So this is what we're going to come back to next week, but I'm going to ask you guys to look, ladies, to look at your list, and we're going to reference what we've budgeted, and we're going to evaluate what needs to be there versus what do we want to be there. Are some of your needs actually wants? So some of you may actually believe that some of these things that you put on there as a need, it can actually become a want. It's not something that needs to be there. So we'll discuss that. We're going to have discussion next week. Can we eliminate some of our wants from our list? For me, I'm not going to eliminate coffee. I can afford to get coffee, but if I couldn't, then I would eliminate it. So there might be some things that we could just take off completely. Spotify may be one of those. I'm not saying you should. I'm just using that as an example. Spotify, we can live without because there's a lot of ways to get free music without paying for it. So that may be something down the line that just has to come off the list, but I'm not saying it is, and let's try to keep it on there. Can your needs list be decreased? So if we're budgeting a certain amount, if we're saying I'm going to spend this much money on electricity every month, can we just turn off the lights more and save some money? Can our grocery budget go down because we're buying generic brands rather than the main brands? So there's ways that we can save some money even on our needs list because we don't have to spend that much money on them. And then can we make our wants list more practical and less expensive? So this is a way that we can get our wants. Like I said, it may not be exactly how we want to get it, but we could still get it if we're strategic about it, less expensive, things like that. And that's a lot of other conversations that we could be having and resources that I have for that. So as far as this next 2 weeks, make a budget. That's all I want you to do, income and expenses. Sit down with somebody if you can, make something up, make up a good story. Don't just put that you make $1 million so that you can afford everything. I want you to be realistic about that. So maybe look up your dream job, how much it makes every month and things like that. And bring that to the table next time. We're going to talk about it. We're going to discuss it. And we're going to talk about some ideas that maybe as you're doing this, you realize, oh, that was definitely a want. I don't have to have this, or I don't have to be spending this much money on it. It's not a need. So come to the table with that information, because that's what we're going to be talking about next time. So that is the end of this, but I want questions, anything that you have to ask. And no question is a dumb question, because there's probably 5 people in this group thinking the same thing. So please ask questions, because you're not alone. I work with adults that have I just worked with a 50-year-old that had no idea how to budget. He makes a decent amount of money, but he had no idea how to budget. So he was asking really, I don't know, like easy questions for me to answer, but he had no idea, and that's okay. Not everybody does. So any questions? Text box.
I have a suggestion for everyone. Since this all of you will be going into your externship year this summer, it would be fun if you wanted to do a little research on the job that you think is your dream job. And as women, it would be interesting for you to do a little research on how much women make in that job and how much men make in that job. Because I will tell you, it's about a 10% difference right now. So just a little fact, in the month of December, 140,000 people lost their jobs due to COVID. 100% of those were women, 100% women. Where 16,000 men gained employment. So 140,000 women lost their jobs and 16,000 men gained employment. So as we're doing our budgets, think of yourself as being the number one breadwinner. Just imagine yourselves as being the only breadwinner. What is a civil engineer make, or what is a biochemist make, or what does an FBI agent make, police officer or a photographer? Think of those things that you see yourself wanting to do, and then do a budget based on that. Obviously, if you have a job right now, you can do a budget based on that. But I would like you to do a little research on what it really means to have the job that you see yourselves doing, and how much you actually will earn, and what's the difference between a female earning that and a man, and what education you might need to bridge that gap is the term that I use. So I think that would be really advantageous for you as Eurekans and you as girls interested in STEM to really explore that. So let's make it practical, but also make it real. So when you look at that, if someone who's a civil engineer makes $85,000 a year, say, I don't even know, I'm just making a dollar amount up, research whether or not women make the same as men in that dollar amount. Let's get some reality into that as well, just a little bit. I don't want to burst anybody's bubbles, because by the time you graduate from college, that gap will be broken, the glass ceiling will be broken, and you all will be the next generation that earns the same. That's my goal.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it's the 10% difference between men and women. That's close. I mean, 30, 40 years
it's
ago,
a lot closer than it was.
bigger. Mhm.
much 20 years ago. I'll tell you a story. When I was in banking when I was in my 20s, and I got this job at a bank in Boston, and I was a personal bank associate. I don't even remember the exact title. But this guy that got hired like 3 months after me, one night he made the mistake of leaving his pay stub on my desk. And I realized we had the same exact position. I actually trained him to do his job, and he made $5 more an hour than I did.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh, that would
So,
be so
and
frustrating.
I went to my boss, who was a woman, and I said, "Why is that?" And she looked at me and she's like, "He's a man." And I was like, "Oh my God, we have to." And she just accepted it as being the way it was. So,
Oh my
anyway,
gosh.
I've worked very hard to not accept that. So, but I want you guys to do a
Mhm.
realistic budget and really understand
Mhm.
what it means to be successful in life.
Mhm.
Okay?
Yeah, and we'll build
Cool?
on this, so don't be stressed out about it. We're just looking
Yeah.
for preliminary numbers that we can work with
Yeah.
later. So
Yeah, I know. I think I stressed you guys out, but I think our next
no, I'm
session
not
is the
saying that.
27th. Our next session is the 27th.
Perfect. Does anybody have
Okay?
questions about anything as my headphone falls out?
No?
No? Okay. Well, feel free to ask questions. My contact, Maura has my contact if you do have questions.
Mm-hmm.
This is what I do for a living. I love talking to people. I love it when people call me because I get bored. So if you have questions, shoot me an email or call me. It would be super great. But we'll otherwise we will just see you on the 27th.
Yep. And I'll send out the worksheets that Caitlin shares with me. So look for those in your parents' email. I don't have everyone's emails. So if you want me to send it to you personally, you need to email my email so that I can send it to you. So if you want me to do that, make sure you send me an email today or tomorrow with your personal email that you want me to use. Does everyone have my email address? You should. Your parents do. So,
I saw a
okay.
little hand come up.
All right. See you guys. Look
All
at, I
right. Bye,
have a passed
everyone.
on, but